In this section, I want to introduce sensing as a service. So it is a new kind of paradigm in parallel to software as a service or a platform as a service. In this case, we are talking about providing the sensors or sensor data basically as a service to anyone who is interested in. So imagine a world where users or data owners get rewarded for making their data available. So we discussed previously that deploying sensors cost a lot because you can't deploy one or two sensors. You need to make them, you need to deploy them in large scale depending on what is the use case scenario you are looking at. For example, noise pollution or air pollution, you need to have large number of sensors deployed across either the building or a city to get a meaningful understand about the air or the noise. So once you deploy these sensors, basically you could use this for many different things. For example, if you have building sensors that would monitor the air quality, you might have like 5 different, so maybe you are an apartment manager who has 5 different apartments. But if someone like city council or a company who is maybe interested in the air pollution across a smart city could utilize your sensors to derive more broad information. For example, if you make your data available as a data owner, and then if other building owners also do the same thing, then a third company actually get access to all this data by paying a fee and do broad citywide analysis. So this help the both parties, because as a building manager or the data owner, I was able to recover some of the cost associated with it, and then the person who is analyzing the data or the company, the council, could access the data for a cheaper price than go and deploy their own sensors, because it will cost more and also it will take time to deploy. So if you can pay and just get access to the data, that is cheaper for the person who is analyzing that data as well. So it's a win-win situation for both data owner as well as the data consumer. So if such data is available, maybe city council can improve their operations and make sure they organize the transportation or change the roads, maybe convert a two-way street into one-way to reduce the vehicles or the pollution that produced by the vehicles. So there are a lot of things you can do if data is available, and if the data is cheaper than deploying, because it is faster and cheaper to get access to other people's data or data generated by other people's sensors rather than you go and deploy your own sensors. And also it sometimes helps to gather historic data as well, because if the owner has the historic data, then you can acquire those historic data as well. Because if you today decided, okay, we want to deploy a bunch of sensors to monitor the air quality of the across the city, then it will take time to deploy the sensors, as well as you will end up only having the data from the point that you finish the deployment. But if you are buying the data from someone who is already deployed, probably you'll be able to get the data from 1 year, 2 year, whatever the data time they deploy the sensor as well. So you have access to the historic data in this kind of sharing sensing as a service model. In the sensing as a service model, a key component is sensor data ownership. So if the data is generated by the personal devices and households, you can consider as one category. So this is more like the consumer version or the data generated by the consumer IoT devices. Then you have the sensors deployed by private organizations such as coffee shops, or it could be manufacturing, building, apartments, stadiums, any other private organizations for their own objective. But then once they achieve their personal objective or the private objective, they could make it available for anyone to buy. Then you have the public sensors, where public entities such as councils, hospitals, or the bridges, or the infrastructure might have their own sensors. For example, we previously talked about the sensors deployed in Sydney Harbour Bridge. So those kind of data could be available for anyone, so they can reutilize and reanalyze for different purposes. And then the fourth category of ownership is commercial sensor data providers. So we could imagine companies who are opportunistically deploy sensors so they can sell the data. Probably these companies will like bridge the gap between the opportunistic sensors as well as, for example, if you want to do kind of air quality monitoring, and then you have a lot of sensors deployed by the public and private entities, but certain areas might not be covered by those opportunistic sensing. So in that case, these commercial data providers will go and deploy sensors and make it available. So then the data consumers can get the full picture without any gaps between different geographical areas. This is the stakeholder value of the sensing as a service model. So I previously highlighted that when you can sense once and then the share across many different people, then it reduces the data acquisition cost. Because I am deploying my own sensor and then getting data, so then I have to bear the cost of the sensor as well as the deployment. But if there are 100 people interested in that particular piece of data, then I can spread across divided the hardware cost as well as the labor cost across these 100 people. Then of course the cost for individual person or entity is less. So in this way, it encourages people to deploy sensors and then develop novel solutions for themselves first, and then after doing that, they can make it available for other people. In that case, we can smaller entities like small and medium companies like or startups can actually collect or access the data previously wasn't available. For example, if I am developing a noise pollution application and I'm a 4-people team at a startup, for some reason I want to access to the weather data, which is open and we can get from that open data, but data that is coming from more granular data like noise pollution or air pollution, we might not be able to get from more station-based weather APIs. So in that case, I'm stuck not being able to access that data. But if the sensing as a model is in place, then probably I could pay for different people who have already deployed these AI and noise pollution. I can pay for a small amount and get access to the data. Because otherwise, as a 4-people team, I'm never going to be able to access to those or could afford to deploy my own sensor. So this levels the playing field. So because if you're a big company, they could go and, for example, if it is a large insurance company, they can go and put these environmental sensors, and then they can develop applications or models around what is the insurance premium or what is the price of the particular house or things like that. But as smaller companies, you can't do that. But if I can get the data by paying a fair amount of money only to get the data I need, then it helps SMEs or smaller companies who cannot go and deploy their own sensors. This brings in new innovation and because there are a lot of people working areas, so this reduces the barriers to get into this business of analyzing data because of the difficulties getting access to the data. So increase the innovation, and small companies, one person can actually analyze thousands or hundreds of thousands of sensor data and develop new solutions, as same as a big company who could afford to go and actually deploy 100,000 sensors. So far, I discussed about why the sensing as service model is important. And most of the examples I discuss are a little bit more smart cities, less personal data, but the model itself is not restricted to personal data or whether it is more smart city type of data. So in this slide, I want to convince you why the personal data, even personal data, in the sensing as service model, why this kind of buying and selling data could work, because it already exists. These are a couple of applications by survey.com and the Google. It's called Google Opinion Reward. Those applications work in the same way. They basically send a few questions. Based on the question, it will come up with series of questions like whether you have a car, and then if you say yes, they will tell you what kind of car, and then depending on who the people behind paying Google or the survey.com in order to conduct this or collect this personal data. For example, it could be car insurance company or car selling company, or it could be service station. So they will ask questions like, how often do you service your car? So based on the number of questions, it's a kind of a dynamic system where they ask questions based on the previous answer to the previous question, and then depending on how many questions you ask, you will get some amount of money. I have personally used this one when I was in Australia. I wasn't managed to get it work in UK. It could be a pilot project that is unique to US. But the point here is that these kind of surveys are run in many sectors. So if it's like grocery shopping, or it could be cars, houses, education. So personal data has value. So that is why Facebook and other social media companies actually selling your data without even telling you. So that is why they give Facebook as a free service, but they will sell your data in order to make money. So that is how the ecosystem works. So here, the sensing as a service model is somewhat trying to bring back more transparency. So the data owner, so individuals will be able to make the decision whether they want to share their data or sell their data or not. So rather than you having third-party companies like Facebook or Google selling your data, so you can directly sell your data if you want, depending on how much privacy sensitive information that you like to share, or how much aggregation or a privacy preserving mechanism put in place before you actually send the data. I will talk about some of the use cases and how this could work in a smart home environment as well as smart city in a later slide. But the point is that this is something already happening both online and offline, and also this is happened to B2B, that is business to business, like the Facebook selling our data behind the scene to another company. But also it happens to C2B, like consumer to business. Sometimes you get questions through apps like these or online surveys, or people ask questions when you go to grocery shops. So when you conduct actual surveys, they will pick certain people, they visit your home and ask a lot of questions, but you get paid for that. That kind of survey. So that is how they gather like what kind of TV programs you watch, or what kind of cheese you eat. All these companies need to know how people consume or behave. So consumer behavior is a significant money behind the consumer behaviors. So every company is ready to pay for actual data. So this kind of data is good, but if you look at the IoT devices and how much data that it can capture compared to a simple survey, there is a significant value that a company would be interested to pay in order to get access to the data, even in a more privacy preserving manner. So because individual data may be not something they're interested, but the more aggregated or high level data. So we're talking about later on how privacy preserving mechanisms would work in the sensing as service model. Here I have given very brief information about how much it costs to collect data. So a sample of 1,000 response could cost about 8,000, depending on what company actually conduct the consumer survey. Google does consumer surveys. There are other specialized companies who will do consumer surveys on behalf of businesses. So currently, one user response cost about 10p in US dollars. So one of the 10th cost of a similar research conducted in a traditional methods. So online surveys are fairly cheap, but also they are not the most reliable. So surveys are always difficult to conduct. So, and most of the time it could also fail to reveal the real situation. But in sensing as service and IoT has the technological capabilities and ability to provide more insights to the businesses about consumer behavior while protecting privacy. This is a very high-level diagram of sensing as a service model or open data marketplace. You can imagine where the data owners and consumers meet and buy and sell their data. So on the left-hand side, you have smart home and personal data. So they are the data owners. They have houses augmented with various kind of IoT devices, collects data. These devices collect data not necessarily to sell the data. So the objective of collecting and processing data in a personal smart home domain is to either automation, so bring convenience, or to reduce of resource consumption, like reducing energy consumption or water consumption. So either convenience or the reduce wastage. So that are the two primary reasons. So after achieving those primary reasons, you could actually sell the data. When you think about when you're talking about selling the data, you are not selling the exact specific values. Because the specific values nobody actually interested in, because the value comes from aggregating large volumes of data. So on the right hand side, you have the data consumers. For example, in this particular use case, we are talking about coffee consumption. So you could think about like a coffee manufacturer, or it could be a smart fridge manufacturer, a research institute, or a government, city council. So it could be anybody from anyone interested in getting access to the data. And then you assume that there is a data analyst who would like to access to different types of data. And then in the middle, it is the marketplace. So the marketplace, we broadly say buying and selling, but it is not necessarily money. So it could be like actual money, it could be vouchers, it could be some kind of points. You probably already know supermarkets gives different vouchers and points and gift cards for doing different things, buying different items, or buying more items. So similar kind of motivation based marketplace we are looking at here. Or it could be like good advice. For example, if you share a certain amount of data, they will give you advice on how to, they will analyze your sleep and tell you how to sleep, or they tell you whether you are drinking too much coffee or you are drinking coffee at wrong time, or changing eating and drinking habits. So it basically exchange of a good advice as well. So it's up to you to, or the individual to share the data based on what is the acceptable reward for them. So this is the basic components of the marketplace, especially looking at smart home and personal data space. So imagine you have a data analyst who like to get access to the ECG data and then oxygen level in blood data, where data owners follow the daily pattern of sleeping at least 6 hours, go to gym, drink coffee more than 2 times per day, and go to gym in the evenings, and at least go to gym in 3 times a week, constrained to a particular location. What this means is basically looking at a particular city, and maybe you can restrict into a particular age as well. So this kind of query, if you are doing any kind of analysis of data, you know that getting access to data, this kind of data for a researcher, let's say you are doing some medical research institution, it's quite impossible, because you have to deploy your own IoT devices and other devices to gather that kind of data. But based on the trend that we are moving in IoT domain, increasingly a lot of people acquiring these ECG measurement data devices, and then oxygen monitoring devices, because you have the smart watches actually do these kind of things. So by naturally, IoT devices actually capture this information. So the coffee consumption, there are internet connected coffee consumptions. The location tracking applications actually capture where you go, so whether it's a gym or not. There are solutions like Bedit who would understand the your daily sleepings patterns and information and data related to the your sleeping and activity levels. So all the information we talk about in this kind of query actually independently captured by different IoT devices. So it's a matter of combining them together and then providing it to the data analyst individually, and then it has to happen in a city scale in order to do some meaningful understand of analysis, correlation, and do kind of medical research. So in this case, you could actually write a query to have all these conditions, because you don't need to access to data of someone if they don't comply with this particular condition, because someone is not going to gym 3 weeks. In this particular research study, the data analyst is not interested, so you don't need to access to that particular data. So you can actually send a query and then find out who are the individuals who could conform to these particular conditions, and make them an offer and then get access to that particular data. So then you can have like some kind of aggregation over a period of time. You can use different privacy preserving mechanisms like aggregation or minimization, or even like onion routing, so you don't know who the person is sending the data. So we will be discussing in privacy in a completely different lesson. But the idea is that you can analyze or gather very niche and specific data in this kind of marketplace. And also it could be valuable for research studies or commercial activities, promotions, and also the data owners may be able to recover some of the cost that they incurred when they are deploying IoT devices. So it could be win for them as well, because at least partially they would recover the cost of the investment they make to buy those devices. In the previous slide, we discussed about smart home and personal data domain. In this use case, we are talking about the smart cities. So less privacy sensitive as a scenario, but still you could apply privacy preserving techniques in certain data types, such as cameras and any other data captures personal information. So the architecture or the model is very similar. So you have the data owners and data consumers, but the data owner could be here. It is more like the city council, maybe one owner, could be like a private stadium owner. They have their own sensors. And then the data consumers, and it could be like a marketing company or a coffee company, like any kind of manufacturer, or again research or another government institution. And then the middle market is pretty much again the same as the previous use case. So here imagine that data analyst would ask a query like give me the crowd movement data, weather, parking, gender ratio, age groups of people who attend a city event in a city X. And then when there is an event in a local stadium, and also a different national event streamed or telecast in online TV. So here it's a quite complicated data acquisition, because now you are focusing on the particular cities, but also you are looking at temporal value, or the time or the date, where there is a local event and there's a national event. Because that is the important part for this particular data analyst, because they are focusing on particular promotional activity. So how do you promote a certain activity, and when there is a national event and then the contradicting local event, we are splitting the attention of some people. And then the data that are gathering. So we talk about in the fog computing use cases before that, you can access to crowd movement data, could use sensors, cameras, you can monitor parking information to do that, as well as you can use video analytics. You can get weather data from a weather API or live weather station, and then the gender and ratios could be analyzed by again cameras, or it could be gate information or ticketing information. So there are many different data sources. You can combine them together to fulfill this query. But the argument I would want to make is that these kind of very useful, very specific, because this kind of data analytics is very rare at the moment. Even though we talk about a lot of data science and data analytics, even though the analytical capabilities or the technology we have, but the data we still don't have. So we have the data in the different silos. But if you have a single marketplace or a sensing as a service model where you can generate these queries, because when the data analyst express their interest on particular data set like this, there has to be an intermediary process that will break down these into different segments, and each query is sent to the data silos. So you need to, one entity might be managing the camera information or the parking information. The other entity might be handling the gate information. Weather API is a separate API. So it has to be like similarly we previously discussed about this composition or the orchestration of different services. So here it's more like orchestrating different data providers, and then sending distributed queries to many different sources and get the data, but only the data that is fulfill the condition. So that is the whole point, because otherwise you will end up with terabytes of data which you need to manually process, which leads to privacy concerns and also significant data storage, data communication, which means that you have, because you are selling the entire data set, then you need to charge for a higher price if you're a data owner. And then you need to waste your own time and human labor actually filtering and curating. So this is the whole idea of sensing as a service, where we are moving towards. There are a number of European and UK projects still in the more research domain, but over the next decade, this will come into more industrial domain from research. So we'll see eventually people able to run this kind of queries and gather data in real world. We have now reached the end of the lesson number 2, architectures. So in this lesson, we broadly introduce IoT architectures by going through the components and architectural patterns and paradigms and ecosystems such as fog computing, wireless sensor network, sensing as a service, and we talk about different trade-offs of different ideas and concepts. Now you have gained the necessary foundational knowledge about the architecture, so we can move into the next lessons on sensors, networking, communications, and other technical subject areas.